Stay breaking the Irish news, and it's time for the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages of the papers as they arrive. We'll begin with our sister publication, This Day. The first headline in This Day this morning: in ambush of vote buyers, ransom takers, CBN voids Naira notes by end of January. And federal government is tackling growing inflation pressure, says Finance Minister. And also, Obadana called hot move to shut down Dangote cement by Kogi.
Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper this morning. Leading headline: 2023 Lagos, Kaduna, Rivers, Kano voters top INEC register. Some riders, 2.7 million illegal registrants deleted, and 23 registration officers under sanction. Just below that, leading photos, President Buhari eyes over $1.3 billion trade with South Korea. More headlines: EFCC rearranged suspended AGF over 109 billion Naira fraud. Meanwhile, CBN plans Naira redesign to counter counterfeiting and kidnapping.
And we'll take a look at the Nation newspaper. PDP crisis, autumn attacks Atiku as Mimiko rejects job. And also in the Nation newspaper, court to Kogi don't disrupt Dangote's operation. Marketers raise petrol price to 179 from 169. And CBN changes Naira notes. The headlines in the Nation newspaper this morning.
The Guardian Nigeria. Worries for Naira as CBN redesigns currency, mops 2.73 trillion Naira black money. Terror alert, federal government dismisses threat as U.S. evacuates workers' families from the FCT.
And we'll take a look at the Daily Sun headline: security agents raid Abuja estate, U.S. asks nationals to leave Nigeria. Kano records another legal victory against the federal government. And also CBN to unveil redesigned 200, 500, 1,000 Naira notes December 15, moves to mop up 2.77 trillion in private coffers.
Some international papers this morning. The Daily Express. Do you really want to scrap pension triple lock again? This is coming from millions of pensioners who fear greater hardship after new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak appeared to backtrack on a 10% triple lock the rise promised days ago.
And now let's bring in Emmanuel Bello for analysis on the preview this morning. Thanks for joining us as always, Emmanuel. We'll begin with This Day, one of the headlines in This Day, and it cuts across the major bulletins. And that's the CBN voiding the Naira notes by end of January to redesign the 500, the 1,000 Naira notes, 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes. Now, there's a lot of confusion about this. People are asking, is it just brand new notes? When you say redesign, are you phasing out the current Naira notes as we know them to be with the images, inscriptions, and everything on it? I mean, and again, the biggest question, what is this meant to help? Given at this point in time, is it to curb inflationary measures, to put measures in place to curb inflation? What exactly are we looking at here, Emmanuel? Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, Benny, you're right. And a lot of confusion around the sudden announcement by the CBN yesterday that it's doing this. And this day, I think, has one of the best perspective on that story, because it puts it very clearly in the way it summed it up in the headline when it said it's actually a move, to ambush vote buying by politicians. That's just, when you go into the story, you see more, because the CBN itself is already telling us why they're doing this. They say they are mopping up black money that's in the market, running around. And then, but beyond that is to redesign the monies and to ensure that we have different. And you're right; those are the things that are causing confusion. Will, for instance, this remain this way, or there's going to be changes? So those are the kind of arguments I think almost everybody is having. But one thing is clear: it's not going to change probably the buying power of your money. It's not going to change what you raise, Benny, the crisis of inflation. I don't know what it's going to do to the economy, but the CBN governor is saying that, well, and it's going to, for whatever reason, it's going to mop up the kind of monies that you have floating, in society, especially monies that are used for nefarious activities like kidnapping and all of that. And it's huge money out there that are not actually in the bank, and so they are not benefiting the economy directly. I'm sure eggheads like Nkechi will have a lot to say about this financial on this financial issue, but it's going to be a debate that's going to run through, I'm sure, the rest of today. A lot of people will talk about it. It happened yesterday, and now we just have to get up for this mop up and these changes and how it's going to affect our life. People are already worried about people in the rural areas, for instance, who didn't know that monies have changed. Imagine going to buy something and suddenly it is no longer the legal tender for buying anything, because after January, you won't be able to use, for instance, take this to anywhere. So you're buying anything, you can't do that unless you have the new notes. So this is a problem for those who have started away a lot of money somewhere, maybe waiting to use them, because there are monies that are not just in the banking system. It's a lot there, but I think at the end of the day, probably we'll all get used to knowing these notes as they're introduced to us. But the CBN will have to do a lot of buy-in programs, talk to the people, and gradually explain this to us, how it's going to work, how it's going to change our lives, and the various issues that I'm sure are associated with this new thing.
All right, now let's relate this to the upcoming election. Just as this day is reporting, it says this change of redesigning of notes is in ambush of vote buyers. How is this going to help curb that as we head into the elections?
Well, that's why I say this day perspective is a very interesting one, because it puts it clearly within the crisis of elections and the big problem of vote buying. Already the EFCC is actually been applauding the CBN for what it's done. The idea is that some people probably stashed money somewhere, on overhead tanks, under their beds, wherever they're hiding those money, in bags somewhere, just raw cash that you don't take to the bank so that they don't get monitored. And these monies can be used for anything. It could be used, those are monies probably used, in paying for ransom, all the money collected from ransom payers and all of that. But with this, if you insist you're going to keep these monies in the places you're keeping them, by January, they're saying, hey, you can't actually use it to buy anything. And the issue of vote buying, if you're just going to keep these monies and use them to bribe voters, what this day report is saying that that money will be practically useless by January. So and that's at the height of these campaigns and the rest. So because you must take these monies back to the bank, and then you collect the kind of new monies that the CBN is talking about. So it takes the wind out of the sail for those that are planning to use monies, raw cash, not within the banking system, to do other things other than what those monies are meant for. So that's the perspective these days giving, tying out to the elections and to the crisis of vote buying.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait out and see how this is going to play out. Now, let's come to the 2023 election still. INEC is saying states like Lagos, Kaduna, Rivers, and Kano are topping its voters register. And there's also a concern there about 2.7 million illegal registrants were deleted. Let's contemplate this for a moment. 2.7 illegal registrants were deleted from the INEC portal of registered voters, and also they are to display via register from November 12th to the 25th, and seeks cooperation of the electorate.
Yes, and of course also the candidates, the politicians themselves. This is a very interesting story and a very important one. Already the states are outlined, the states where especially the presidential candidates, the state that will have to really struggle to get the chunk of those votes, and you can see the state. So you can, with this Punch report, you can begin to understand the direction these elections are going, the places where the toss-up states, the battlegrounds, and all of that. So this report really helped in that, and of course the figure you just reeled out about those who have been deleted. So it's always important that what INEC is doing is also almost helping the candidate with very valuable information on where they probably need to do more campaigns, do a lot of campaign adverts and try to win the votes from those places. And Rivers State, for instance, is on that list. There's Lagos, there's Kano, and then there's Kaduna. So what are the parties doing in these places? Which parties are actually holding sway in this chunk votes state? When you begin to look at that, you start understanding the map, so to speak, of the direction of the election and how APC or PDP or even the Labour Party is going to perform around these four major states. Because anyone that can lock in, for instance, two of these states effectively probably will have an edge over the other parties. So this kind of story really helped in making those analysis and looking at the map, the electoral map especially also to be able to make some kind of prediction that this is where the elections are going, and this is probably the party that is going to clinch this number of votes in this state or clinch that number of votes in the other states. So those kind of this kind of story helps in that, and what INEC is doing is consistently helping the candidates and also the electorate to make informed decision around the issue of campaigning and where they're going to maybe spend more money in trying to get more votes.
Let's still stay on the 2023 general elections, talking about the opposition People's Democratic Party and their crisis. The Nation newspaper says Autumn attacks Atiku as Mimiko rejects job. Now, this is another setback for the PDP presidential candidate Atiku. Emmanuel, what are your thoughts?
Yes, the Autumn thing happened yesterday, but the Nation newspaper pushed it up because they had to do the first cast story. But today, they are back on the front page. Yes, on the front page. The Nation newspaper always doing that, bringing to the fore the crisis in the PDP. And yes, it's crisis, and the Nation has consistently followed the PDP crisis, especially the crisis of Autumn, the Wike camp, and now the rejection of an offer by Mimiko. All that, there are problems that the PDP will have to deal with because it's an internal crisis. It's practically a civil war there. And it's still an offshoot of the Wike, the original Wike problem. The fact that Wike said, look, you have to deal with this IU situation or else I'm not playing ball. So these are just offshoot of the problem. Autumn in Benue, who is actually an ally of Wike, saying that, look, he will not campaign for Atiku and that Benue State will reject Atiku. But of course, he will work for the PDP. The danger in some of those mixed messages is that on one hand, you are telling your electorate not to do the presidential candidate, but you have got a governorship candidate to campaign for. That's, at the end of the day, my heart. Your electorate, and it's actually confusing because there's a disconnect between you telling them that you are rejecting the presidential candidate while you are working for your governorship candidate. I don't know how they're going to work around that, but those are the offshoots of the problem. Mimiko rejecting an offer is also a blow. It's, whether you like it or not, it's psychological that you are offering someone a position and then you say no. Someone of high standing, Mimiko, ex-governor, saying that no, I'm not accepting. So these are problems, serious problems that the PDP we have to deal with, but as they go about doing their campaigns.
And I think the Sun and the Guardian have this as one of the headlines. Still, the terror alert security claimed by the U.S. in the FCT, as it reports that in the Guardian that the U.S. moves family out of the FCT, and still the federal government dismisses the claim of any high security alert as put by the U.S. If you will, your 2 cents on this thing.
Well, I think it's really serious because, I don't know whether we're on the way to, on the road to Kabul, Afghanistan. Benny, remember when, the U.S. start pulling out its citizens from your country? That's serious problem, asking them not to stay. If it's not safe for their citizens, it's probably not. It's also not safe for you and I. And I think rather than trying to, and I think the effort of the federal government is to see whether they can reassure the citizenry and tell us that, look, there are no problems, they are on top of the matter or on top of the situation. But when you hear stories like the U.S. pulling out, its citizens and asking them to leave, that is serious. And I don't know about you, Benny, but I'm losing sleep over this, and I think a lot of people are losing sleep over that. But of course, on the other hand, is the federal government saying that, look, this is in one report I heard that they say it's politically motivated. Whatever that is, it's just not good for the optics that the U.S. is pulling out its citizens and asking them to leave your country. You whether you like it or not, it raises your panic, levels, and you are worried about the consequences of this, especially when we all know that the Americans will not just say these things or will not just go ahead to be talking about this. So if you're actually asking their citizens to leave, if there are no reasonable ground for them to be expressing those kind of fears. So, and if there are reasonable grounds and you have these denials, it's problematic. The best we can say here is that, look, the federal government will have to look inward, look deeper to see the kind of partnership and the kind of, thinking outside the box or whatever they can do to see that an ugly situation is averted. So denials and trying to downplay it and trying to reassure us, give us false hope of some kind of security is not the way to go.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel Bello. That's the press preview. Let's hear your views on all the burning issues. Follow us on Twitter at Arise TV, and you can join today's conversation using the hashtag AriseDaybreak.